Hello, everybody, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program. This is a new series I decided to start up because Kerbal Space Program is a lot of fun. You can tell already that it's just all kinds of full of humor, specifically the helmet rolling across the background of the moon. Now, I chose this game for several reasons. One, it's a sandbox-style game that can be insanely complicated, so there's plenty of opportunities to learn. And two, this is one of the very, very, very few games that I absolutely love, but I totally suck at it. I'm terrible at this game. So there's going to be plenty of learning opportunities for both of us. So let's get started. When we first start out, we come to our rather plain launch area. Over here, this is just the simple launch pad. This is our vehicle assembly building, and it actually shows the name down in the lower left-hand corner. This is to put together rockets for vertical launch. Over here is the space plane hangar. This is to put together like jets and, well, space planes to take off with the runway. And here is the tracking station. This keeps track of, the orbits of the moons, all of the space debris, all of your presently running missions. Like if we click on it, we can see that I have a few things out here. A ship that got stuck into orbit. It's out of fuel. I can't bring it down. We got a couple that are just kind of floating around. One that made a flat splash down. The pilot's not in there anymore. I have no idea where the pilot went. Then we got this one here, and that Kerman's still around. And by the way, this is the planet Kerman. Over here is the moon. And if we scroll out, we can see the second moon, Minmus. Now on the left side, you can see all of the currently running missions. Yes, I intentionally left these running. Just for the fun of it. Just to screw around. And up here is the back button. Okay, so we want to go to the vehicle assembly building because rockets are simpler than the space planes. And I want to start out simple. Okay, the first thing you get is you see this screen. And you get to choose your command module. Now, there's a couple of different types. These two here are really designed for space planes. This is a shuttle type cockpit. And then we have the command pods. Looks something like Apollo 11 style pod. This is a 3-man pod. This is a 1-man pod. Now, I usually use the 1-man pod because it's just simpler and I'm more used to it. I'm used to version 0.13, which is the free version, by the way. So if you want to play this, you can click the link down in the description. It will take you to the Kerbal Space Program main page where you can download version 0.13 for free. I am presently playing on 0.16, which is the pay version. And I do recommend paying for this game. This game is an amazing game. Now, let's look at the user interface right now. Here we have where all our parts are. Up here is the tabs to choose between them. Like right now we're in propulsion, and we can choose the different pages of propulsion. Over here is command and control. I don't know what all these things do. I'm going to have to research them. I know what the SAS module does, and I know what the ASAS module does, but I'll go into those later. We have the structural and aerodynamics, like wings and fuel ducts and decouplers and stuff like that. Then we got the utility stuff. We have no scientific stuff yet, but hey, it's still beta, so they're still adding stuff. So we got ladders, landing gear, more ladders, and then one of the most important things in pretty much anything you're going to be building like this is a parachute. And basically you just click on them. And I'm not holding down the mouse button, by the way. Once you click on it, it pulls it over like this. And then everything just snaps into place. Or if you want it like on the side, you can get it on the side. So you can have like, 2, 3 of them. So if you have a bigger landing components. Anyways, but you put it where you want and then you click again and it places it. Okay. Then from here we have stuff that isn't really implemented yet. This up here, actually let's go down to, let's just sit there for a little while. This is your symmetry button. Basically right now if you select something, it will put one of them, but if you click this, you can see that it places 2 of them identically, and then you can just keep going. Now we have 3 of them, 4 of them, and so on and so forth. And it'll eventually loop around. And then this will be a snap to angles kind of thing, where this one, it's nice and smooth and clean, but this one will snap to the angles. And I guess each has its own little uses. Oh, and if you have an item like that, you click back in there and it makes it go away. So that's useful. Up here is where we name this. And we shall name this I Like Beer. In honor of my first, dedicated fan. And the simple fact that what we're about to build will probably require a hell of a lot of beer to convince yourself to get into. This is the button we can click for a new thing. We can load a previously built ship or previously saved ship. We can save the ship we're working on. For example, click. We just saved I Like Beer. This is our launch button. And the back button will take you back to where you came from. Down here is where you can adjust all your staging and reset everything. So let's start with making a rocket. Let's go with a very, very simple rocket. Right now we already have a command module and we already have a parachute. So we need the actual rocket component. Now that's about as simple as it gets. We got a rocket, we got a command module, and we got a parachute. That should be all we need. So let's save I Like Beer and launch it. Then it only takes a minute to load. And then we gotta wait a little bit for it to stop being so laggy, because it's still loading stuff. There we go, nice and smooth. Okay, and as you can see, I have a few extra missions. These are, I don't know, ghosts of missions past. Everybody that survived is right there. So, what do we have here? We have, this is altimeter up here. This is your vertical speed. This is the atmosphere meter. Up here is the mission time. Right now we're at 0 because technically we're in negative time. We're before the mission. Up here is your time warp. You can speed up time or put it back down to normal. As you get further out of the atmosphere, the faster you can warp. That way, when you're traveling to, the moon, you don't have to spend 3 whole days waiting for your rocket to get there. Down here shows off your staging, what stage you're on, what stage is next, that kind of thing. Down here is your piloting controls, basically, or at least the display. The pitch is controlled by the W and S. The yaw is controlled by the A and D, so this is a WASD game. The roll is controlled by Q and E. Over here we have the compass and other important information. Up here is where you have your speed and relative to what. So right now we're going 0 meters per second relative to the surface of Kerbin. This is your 3D compass, and we'll get into that a little bit later once we're actually flying. These two here are the lights telling you what control mechanisms are enabled. If you hit T, it will enable your SAS, which is, there's a basic one built into the pod. T turns it back off. The RCS is controlled by R, and that's kind of like a rocket jet style thing that stick out the side of your rocket. Like if you ever see the shuttle when it's doing a maneuver, you can see the little jets shooting out the side as it turns. That's what an RCS is. At least I'm fairly sure. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Here we have our throttle, and if we're using variable thrust nozzles like with the liquid fuel engines, you can use the shift to crank up the throttle or the control to crank it down. Now if you have the solid fuel rockets like that, this means absolutely nothing. Over here is your G-force gauge, which as of right now, I think the only thing that it matters with is structural integrity. Like if we crank this thing up to 15, it's not going to kill our little Matt Long Kerman over here. And down here is the temperature, which I'm not 100% sure if it is relevant to anything yet. There are overheat warnings, but they show up over here for the rockets. And I'm sure we'll see that later. Over here we can see our camera, the camera of our pilot and his name, and we can even control if we want to go EVA or not. And well, right now we don't, because he would just fall off and then we'd never be able to get him back in. And if you have the 3 crew pod, you'll see all 3 here, and you can go EVA on all 3. Now, we start the launch by hitting the space button. The space button controls what stages you go through. So when you hit space, it goes to the next stage. So when we want to launch, when we want to activate the initial stage, we hit the space bar. In 3, 2, 1, liftoff. And off we go. Oh, I forgot to enable my SAS. But because this rocket is built like a rocket, where the center of gravity is directly above the force, it would pretty much stay stable anyways. We can see our fuel going down, and we can see our overheat here. We can also see our G-forces. We're going pretty high there. So now we're done. The fuel is gone, the rocket's empty. But we're still traveling up because of momentum. So this engine is actually pretty good, and Matt Long is freaking out. He might know something I don't. But the engine for this is actually pretty good. For example, if we let this thing start falling, with a proper engine, the crew hatch, or the crew pod, will actually turn around and point down, because at this point it's the heavy part, because the rocket itself is empty. And there we go. We can see the indicator of our direction already shifting. That's the direction we're actually traveling, and with the X there, it means that it's on the other side of the compass. So we're going backwards, basically. As we can see here, this is the direction the nose is pointing. It's still pointing relatively close to up, but it's starting to tilt. Now, while it's tilting, I'll point out up here, the atmosphere gauge was going down. And we do have to worry about friction, so this will actually turn faster and faster as we get deeper into the atmosphere. Oh, and there it goes. Now we got all this surface area, so it just shoves it even harder. And now we're pointing straight down, like an arrow. And we can see that the compass is now brown, which indicates that we're pointing at the ground, and it's probably a bad thing. Now, as we go down, we need to activate our parachute. But I want to tilt sideways just a little bit to use friction to slow me down. because we were going pretty quick relative to the surface there. And I'm just hitting A here to keep it sideways. Yeah, we have a little bit of control, but anyways, to activate our parachute, we have to hit the space button. Well, I think something went wrong. I think we're screwed. Oh, crap. I think we're in trouble. Help. Matt Long, abandon ship. Bail. Activate your jetpack. Up. Will we land it? No! Okay, so even if he landed it, he would have been destroyed by his own rocket. Okay, well, that was a failure. And we can see how many other failures I've had. So if we hit escape, we'll get to the in-game menu. And we can see our log. We lift off. Yeah. that failed pretty quick. Pretty impressively quick. We can see our stats. Most G-force endured 2 Gs. But the thing went way higher than that. Anyways, we have our little buttons. If we hit restart flight, we'll start right back at the launch pad. Now, we don't want to do that because obviously something went wrong. We can go back to the vehicle assembly building and fiddle with our little device. We can go to our tracking station. We can go to the Space Center, or we can close it and go back to the game in progress. Now, if we actually had a mission in progress instead of a catastrophic failure, this button will be end mission. So, let's go to the vehicle assembly building, and we can see what I did wrong. It's actually fairly obvious if anybody was actually paying attention. I didn't stage anything. So I just put this together. It did not put it into stages for me. If we wanted this to work right, I'd need another stage, and I would need to drag my rocket down into that stage. That way, the first stage is just activating this rocket, and then the second stage is the parachute. So let's save I Like Beer, and let's launch it. Alright, and there we are. So now, when we hit space, we will activate just the rocket. So let's see if this works. In 3, 2, 1, liftoff. Oh, by the by, we have Bob Kerman, one of the original 3. Hopefully he survives. And I love the little details we have, like the nozzle glowing red as it heats up. I love it. And then the curvature of Kerman and all the space. It's all pretty amazing. Now this does cycle through a day-night cycle. And this has been night for a long time for me. So I don't have a clue how long the days last or how long the nights last, but I can imagine it's a long time. So I want to wait till we start heading down before I activate our parachute. And that's the fun thing about momentum. It can take a long time to take effect. So I can imagine this thing is not a light thing, and as Newton's laws would show, the heavier an object is, the better suited it is to keep traveling when there's an opposing force like gravity or air resistance. So that's why this just kind of keeps going. So we're falling now. We're about to roll over eventually as we hit thicker atmosphere. Bob's not too terribly thrilled about this whole entire process. Bob, you're a test pilot. You're supposed to be excited about this kind of thing. Yes, nervous, but you're always supposed to be showing a smile. What's going on, Bob? Here we go. We're starting our little rotation here. And no, that's not me controlling it. It's just doing that itself. That's just the engine controlling. We're controlling it. So let's use the side to slow us down a little bit. And as we get into thicker atmosphere, the air resistance actually affects the ship more. So it's actually getting harder and harder for it to stay this way. And it's slowing us down more and more. So once we get about, I don't know, 1,000 meters, I'll activate the parachute. That should be low enough. Well, that should be high enough, I should say, technically. Let's activate it now, just in case. And now, thanks to drag, the ship rights itself automatically, and we're slowing down pretty considerably. Now, this kind of parachute, you see, it's not fully deployed, but it will be here now. I've seen these kind of parachutes before. They're actually real parachutes. What it is there's a piece of something or other that gets pushed up the strings, and it's attached to every single one of the strings, so it pulls the string in. That way the parachute doesn't fully deploy until it slows down enough that the wind resistance isn't pushing the device up anymore. It just slides down and the parachute's allowed to fully open. Now in this case, that's not what's happening, because it only ever activates at 600 meters. Never higher, even if you're going slower. So right now we're going 7.2 meters per second, and that should be soft enough to land. We're about to find out. And judging from that thing, I don't actually remember if that's the same kind of test, but judging from that thing, I would say it is. And I would say that this would survive. And there we go. And then from here, we can just click on our Bob here and hit EVA. And we have control of him. We can use the mouse wheel to scroll in. Now, one thing we do notice, I don't have a ladder. But he's okay. Now, one thing about the controls for controlling little guy, he's a WASD kind of thing. So you can walk around with the WASD keys. The L button activates his helmet lights. So he can send Morse code, say, hey, come pick me up, please. The R button activates his jetpack. And when you're walking, you can, well, when you're walking without the jetpack active, you can hold the shift button and he'll run. Now, one thing I don't think I mentioned is the camera control. I'm holding down the right mouse button and then moving the mouse to control the camera. I did say that the wheel zooms in and zooms out. If you press and hold the wheel and then move the mouse around, the camera itself turns, but it doesn't center on the player or the ship. And then the right mouse button doesn't really do anything. It's more for selecting stuff. But I can't actually select anything at the moment. But you can right-click on your little guy and get his name and how much fuel he has left. Pretty much everything has fuel, so always watch how much fuel you'll have. And now Bob here has one hell of a long walk back to the station, or back to the center. So, As Bob makes his way slowly back to the center, because nobody's going to be nice enough to come out and pick him up, I will say adieu. In the next episode, we'll cover other things like staging and landing, hopefully. Or possibly going into orbit. I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. Landing, you'll learn more, but going into orbit is far more spectacular and has far more chance of ending spectacularly. But either way, I will see you guys in the next episode. Oh, I killed him. Oh, nope, he's okay.